This is Bangladesh. The country is situated in a bustling populous region of South Asia between India and Myanmar, along the coast of the Bay of Bengal. Under the leadership of then-President Rahman, this economic renaissance in the late 1970s saw Bangladesh open its arms to free markets and foreign investments. This same period also laid down the early plans for what would become a bustling powerhouse of an economy, setting Bangladesh on a path towards its own meteoric rise and what some would consider to be the best-kept economic secret in South Asia. Fast forward to today, the economy of Bangladesh has taken on a pace of growth that's nothing short of incredible. Today, it ranks as the second largest economy in South Asia, and it's growing faster than any other. On the global stage, its economy is the 33rd largest in nominal terms and the 25th largest by purchasing power parity. But these numbers only tell a part of the story. All around, Bangladesh is booming, and it's no coincidence. The nation's consistent effort, resilience, and focus on growth has created a bustling economy that's lifted a country of hundreds of millions. The closer you look, the more impressive it gets. It's clear that Bangladesh's rise has been meteoric. It's been on a steady economic climb over the past several years, but through the turn of the century, it still hadn't quite taken off. The turning point, though, came around 2005. That year, for the first time in decades, Bangladesh's GDP per capita began growing at an impressive clip, even surpassing that of its regional neighbor, Pakistan. Since 2006, Bangladesh's annual GDP growth has exceeded Pakistan's by roughly 2.5 percentage points per year. The geographically small nation of almost 170 million never looked back. The period between 2016 and 2021 saw the country maintain an impressive annual GDP growth of 6.4%, a blistering growth that outpaced many of its Asian peers like Indonesia, the Philippines, and even India. That's also significantly better growth than the global average of 2.9%. Then, in 2019, the country achieved a remarkable GDP growth of 7.9%, although it fell slightly down to 6.9% in 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Bangladesh's economy refused to slow down. It followed up with a growth rate of 7.1%, marking yet another year of seemingly unstoppable economic growth. And though some economists have recently been revising down their forecasts for this year's GDP numbers, they're still projecting a very positive economic outlook for Bangladesh in 2023. Estimates range between 6 and 6.5% for both 2023 and 2024. All of this represents an absolutely massive burst of growth for the South Asian country over the last decade. The country's GDP per capita had swelled to around $2,800 in 2022, higher than India's before considering purchasing power. At its current growth rate, Bangladesh is on track to become an upper-middle-income country of at least $4,000 in GDP per capita by 2030. For perspective, the global GDP per capita currently hovers around $12,000 and $12,500. Now, of course, this financial boom has not been without its hiccups. Like the rest of the world, Bangladesh was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Hardest hit among its core economic sectors was industry, with agriculture being the only sector maintaining positive growth. But Bangladesh proved resilient. Its economic recovery post-COVID was much faster than the rest of its peers. In 2020, Bangladesh's GDP rose another 3.4%, making it the only South Asian economy to have grown during the pandemic. And similarly, during the 2008 global financial crisis, the country's annualized growth was 5.5%. compared to a global average of 0.4%. Resilience seems to be a common thread for this Bangladesh economy. Despite such promising growth, Bangladesh's economy still faces its fair share of challenges. Rising inflation, energy shortages, and a balance of payments deficit and a revenue shortfall are among the key hurdles, but they pale in comparison to what has already been achieved. Today, Bangladesh represents a modern economic miracle. But how did they manage to achieve such an incredible feat, and how likely is it to continue? Like any other, the economy of Bangladesh is a thriving, diverse marketplace, bustling with different sectors, industries, and services, each contributing to its own piece of the pie. Among these, however, the garment and agriculture sectors are by far the most important. Agriculture in particular has long been a pillar of the economy. The largest employment sector in Bangladesh up until 2018. It employs close to half of the total workforce. In 2021, the nation's agricultural output stood at a remarkable 93.3 million tons, placing Bangladesh among the top 10 global producers of 22 different agricultural products, including rice, lentils, potatoes, onions, tea, and various fruits. Despite being the 94th largest country in terms of land area, it's risen to 14th place globally in terms of primary agriculture commodity production. And the sector is still growing. In 2019, it accounted for $45 billion of Bangladesh's GDP and is projected to reach a market volume of $48.75 billion by 2028. Output has only continued to rise as the sector has benefited from increasing industrialization and government investment. As a result, Bangladesh is now self-sufficient in food grains. Similarly, fish, meat, eggs, milk, and fruit production have also increased to a large extent, driven by agricultural mechanization and machinery subsidies. However, even though Bangladeshi agriculture is rapidly growing and producing more and more, the sector is actually shrinking as a percentage of GDP. After independence, more than half the country's GDP came from agriculture. Now, that number is down to only around 11%. This is a positive development though. On the other hand, the contribution of industry to Bangladesh's GDP has increased from 8 to 35%, a mark of a nation and an economy in the midst of development. So, while Bangladesh's agriculture output has grown considerably, the main source of its economic growth stems in large part from the success of its garment industry, which accounts for 84% of its total exports. It wasn't always that way, however. In the 1980s, ready-made garments accounted for a quarter to a third of Bangladesh's total exports, before skyrocketing in the 90s. The rapid growth of the garment industry in Bangladesh was a defining factor of its economic development. From under 1,000 garment factories in the beginning of the 1990s, Bangladesh now sees the daily operation of over 4,000, down from a high point of almost 6,000 in 2012. Nationwide employment in the industry followed suit. By 2015, 4 million Bangladeshi workers were employed by the ready-made garment industry, and today that number is closer to 4.4 million. Overall, the industry contributes close to 11% of Bangladesh's entire GDP. The export value of ready-made garments and their impact on Bangladesh's economy is hard to understate. In 2021, Bangladesh's exports totaled $51.8 billion, making it the 56th largest exporter in the world. Garments accounted for $31.5 billion. That's a massive 61% of all of Bangladesh's export value. The rise of the garment industry hasn't all been smooth sailing, however. The last decade saw the sector evolve and adapt due to a number of tragic workplace incidents, like the 2012 Tazreen factory fire and the 2013 Rana Plaza collapse, which together claimed over 1,000 lives. These incidents drove away some international buyers. However, this dark period also catalyzed a shift towards better factory safety. Thanks to initiatives like the Accord on Fire and Building Safety and the RMG Sustainability Council, the changes resulted in shutting down numerous unsafe factories, helping Bangladesh regain its allure in the global apparel sourcing realm, which contributed to another decade of rapid growth. While developments in agriculture and manufacturing are responsible for a great deal of the economic miracle Bangladesh has experienced, it's also worth mentioning about the rapidly growing services economy. Dhaka, the nation's capital, is home to a small technology sector set to continue expanding, and is led by companies and their CEOs with bold dreams of one day surpassing their IT neighboring giant, India. With the rapid digitalization of our modern world, many developing countries like Bangladesh are honing in on the digital economy. While developed nations like the US and European countries are continually coming to rely on IT outsourcing, Bangladesh is one of the economies poised to benefit the most. Hundreds of companies employing hundreds of thousands have taken up operations in Bangladesh. Even freelancing has become a popular career option. As a result, Bangladesh has already become the second largest provider of online labor, behind India. Around 500,000 active freelancers are working regularly, out of 650,000 registered freelancers in the country, and altogether they bring in $100 million each year. Ultimately, Bangladesh's young information and computing technology sector is still dwarfed in comparison to its main economic drivers, ready-made garments and agriculture. But in an increasingly digital world, it's a field that will continue to play a bigger role with time. Eventually, it could even become Bangladesh's third engine of economic development: services, agriculture, and industry. Together, these sectors and their rapid growth have driven the meteoric rise of Bangladesh's modern economy, but it didn't happen on its own. No, Bangladesh's economic surge was driven by a number of intentional changes, strategic shifts, private sector engagement, government policies, and more, without which it would have never come about. A major turning point came when the government decided to shift its economic focus from being primarily agriculture-based to embracing industrial and service sectors. This change wasn't just on paper, it was a systemic shift laid out in the government's 5-year plans, which date back to 1973. The most recent of them, the 8th 5-year plan, honed in on themes of export-oriented manufacturing-led growth, agricultural diversification, information technology-based entrepreneurship, and plenty more. One of the earliest results of the government's strategy was moving investment from the public realm to private enterprise. Over time, private investments rose to 87%, a stark contrast from the post-independence era where it stood at a mere 15%. Public investment, on the other hand, was at 17%, down from 85%. Evidence of the fundamental transition that had taken place. The shift was deliberate, hoping to reduce dependency on a single sector. It also helped to empower small and medium-sized companies, or SMEs, which constitute over 99% of all businesses in Bangladesh. These SMEs are not just business entities, most are cottage enterprises, which consist of a sole individual or family. Really, they're the engines driving job creation and economic dynamism across the country. At the same time, the government also plunged deep into infrastructure. Mega projects were initiated. Road connections and electricity facilities were extended to almost every upazila or sub-district. But it wasn't just about laying down tar and cables, it was about connecting cities and markets, and energizing the economy. Billions of dollars have been spent to date on infrastructure, to the tune of $23.6 billion in 2022 alone. Bangladesh's massive bet on infrastructure development has ramped up considerably in the last few years. Since 2018, the country has spent more aggressively than its neighbors, like Sri Lanka and Pakistan, and this expenditure accounted for 5.1% of GDP in 2022. Results have been mixed, but no doubt the developments have helped to attract foreign investment and spur economic growth. Now, if infrastructure had been important to stabilize the economy and international investment has helped grow the ready-made garment industry, then the overhaul of the financial sector was the third major driver of economic success for Bangladesh. In the late 1980s, Bangladesh revitalized its banking sector by privatizing 2 state banks and introducing private ones. This significantly improved its financial stability. The adoption of back-to-back letters of credit also helped propel the ready-made garment sector by ensuring transitional integrity and payment security. Fundamentally, these banking reforms underpin sustained economic growth. Then you have remittances. The transfers of money back home have been on a steady rise since 1981, with Bangladesh the 7th highest recipient globally in 2022, contributing to a stronger balance of payments, a stable currency, and healthier foreign exchange reserves. On the flip side, the financial sector had its share of hurdles to clear. Contrary to negative perceptions, Bangladesh's private sector credit growth tells a tale of economic vigor, with private borrowing hinting $117 million in July 2022. This marked a 14% year-on-year growth in August 2022, barely shy of the government's 14.1% target, suggesting a fertile business climate and potential GDP rise. However, this boon hinges on the borrowed funds being repaid and stimulating the economy. If not, it risks inflating prices further. And as of July 2022, inflation has already reached 7.48%. The challenge is compounded by a recent increase in non-performing loans, indicating money is not returning to the banks. Additionally, tax collection, a crucial aspect of economic health, had room for improvement, with tax revenues accounting for only about 8% of GDP in 2022. These challenges call for a closer look at the financial frameworks and an emphasis on improving the country's financial health to sustain its positive trajectory. All being said, there is simply no denying the meteoric rise of the Bangladeshi economy. It's growing faster than any other South Asian economy and is on track to hit the $1 trillion mark, with projections varying between 2030 and 2040, depending on a number of factors. And although it feels like the global economy's best kept secret, recognition is slowly coming forward. When Bloomberg lauded Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for her reforms and for countering the impacts of back-to-back global economic crises, it wasn't just about her actions in the present, it was that Bangladesh was setting a presidency for stability in the face of adversity. According to the Planning Ministry of Bangladesh, if the growth rate falls below 5%, the economy will reach $1 trillion by 2040. However, if the country manages to ramp up its economic growth to 8 to 9% while maintaining internal stability, it could achieve this milestone by 2030. Other projections by foreign financial institutions align with these forecasts, also marking 2040 as the year Bangladesh's economy will hit 1 trillion, given that certain developmental projects are likely to provide even more positive impact in the next decade. To quicken the journey toward the $1 trillion economy, sustaining high growth rates is crucial. The nation would need to navigate through global economic uncertainties and tackle internal challenges like political issues, inflationary pressures, and revenue shortfall to ensure continued growth. All in all, Bangladesh's economic future seems promising. In the end, Bangladesh's unprecedented rise from a struggling post-independence economy to a notable player in South Asia's economic arena is nothing short of remarkable. This journey wasn't fueled by luck or external windfalls, but by strategic decisions, policy frameworks, and a relentless pursuit of economic diversification and stability. The lessons from Bangladesh's economic narrative are plentiful: the importance of private sector engagement, robust infrastructure, and a conducive business environment, among other elements. For other emerging economies, if they'd like to follow in the footsteps of Bangladesh, the path has been set and defined. They only need to walk on it. Thanks for watching.